There was a time you were the smart one, the one who finished the test early, who didn't need to study much, who seemed to just get it. Adults praised you. Teachers smiled when you raised your hand. You didn't just perform well, you were the promise. But somewhere along the way, that title turned into pressure. Now, when you scroll through life, through jobs, success stories, milestones, you feel this quiet confusion. Why do I feel like I'm the one lagging behind? You're not lazy. You're not lost. But something inside you shifted. That effortless brilliance became harder to access. And deep down, you wonder if you somehow peaked too early, or if being a smart kid came with an invisible cost. This feeling is more common than you think. Many once gifted kids grow up feeling quietly disoriented, like life flipped the script. In school, intelligence felt like a superpower. You were rewarded for being quick, not necessarily for being resilient. You were praised for knowing the answer, not for learning how to fail gracefully. But adulthood doesn't reward quick answers. It rewards consistency, effort, emotional endurance. And that's where the gap begins. The smart kid identity can become a trap, a psychological comfort zone built on effortless achievement. It conditions your self-worth around being naturally good at things, instead of growing through struggle. So when real life demands persistence, uncertainty, and emotional stamina, the kind school never really taught, the smart kid often feels unprepared. Not because they lack ability, but because their sense of identity was built on ease, not effort. Psychologists call this the fixed mindset trap. The belief that your intelligence is static, that it defines you. If you grew up being told you were smart, you might have subconsciously learned that struggle meant failure, that needing help meant you weren't who people thought you were. Imagine this. A child aces math effortlessly in elementary school. Everyone says, "You're a genius." But in high school, when the problems get harder, that same child starts hesitating. Instead of seeing difficulty as part of learning, they see it as proof they're not that smart anymore. So they withdraw. They stop trying. They protect their identity by avoiding the very challenge that can help them grow. Now fast forward to adulthood. That child becomes someone who hesitates to take risks, not because they don't want to succeed, but because deep down, failure feels like exposure. It threatens the self-image they've carried for years. This creates a quiet perfectionism, the kind that doesn't look like chasing success, but avoiding imperfection. You wait for the right moment, the perfect plan, the guarantee that you'll excel before you start. And while others learn through messy trial and error, you pause, waiting to feel ready. There's also the praise paradox at play. When success was your identity, praise became a form of emotional currency. So now, every decision carries a hidden question. What if I try and no one's impressed? That's why some of the smartest people end up stuck in overthinking, procrastination, or self-doubt. Not because they lack discipline, but because their sense of worth became entangled with performance. They learn how to shine, but not how to stumble. And stumbling is where growth happens. In adulthood, intelligence alone doesn't predict fulfillment. Adaptability does. Emotional intelligence does. The ability to tolerate uncertainty, to try again after embarrassment, to keep moving even when no one's watching. That's what separates momentum from stagnation. But when your brain was trained to equate struggle with failure, these lessons don't come naturally. They feel wrong, almost like self-betrayal. So you might choose safety instead. Jobs beneath your potential. Dreams that stay as daydreams. Perfection over progress. And yet deep down, you feel restless, like you were built for something greater, but you can't seem to find a switch that turns it all back on. Here's the truth. You didn't lose your intelligence. You outgrew the environment that once rewarded it. The rules changed and no one told you. You're not behind. You're just being asked to evolve. The kind of intelligence you once relied on, quick, analytical, impressive, got you through school. But life now calls for a different kind of brilliance. The kind that's patient, curious, courageous enough to start again. Next, we'll go deeper into how gifted child burnout shapes your self-esteem, your motivation, and even your relationships. We'll explore why smart people often feel emotionally exhausted and how to rebuild confidence, not on talent, but on growth. But know this, you're not behind. You're just in a part of the journey where intelligence transforms from something you have into something you use. The smart kid in you didn't fail. They just never learned that brilliance isn't about being ahead. It's about learning how to keep going, even when the light dims for a while. Here's what they don't tell you about growing up as the smart one. It's not just about intelligence. It's about identity. When you were praised for being exceptional, that praise became the air you breathed. And so, every new challenge became a silent test. Am I still who they said I was? This is where imposter syndrome begins to whisper. It doesn't shout. It doesn't declare itself. It hides behind overthinking, behind perfectionism, behind that constant comparison to people who seem to be doing more with less. You look at others who weren't labeled gifted, who once asked you for help, and you wonder how they're thriving now. But what you're seeing is a result of something school rarely measured: grit, the ability to fail, recover, and try again without needing applause. Many smart kids were shielded from struggle, not intentionally, but structurally. Their quickness earned them shortcuts. Their ease made effort seem unnecessary. So when real life demanded endurance, they mistook discomfort for danger. And that's the hidden wound. You weren't taught how to fail without losing yourself. This is why you might crave external validation so deeply. When your confidence was built on constant praise, silence feels like rejection. You start to interpret the world neutrality as proof that you've fallen short. You chase meaning in productivity. You measure self-worth in results. You overcommit, trying to recreate that same admiration you once got so easily. But now, no amount of achievement feels enough. Psychologists describe this as contingent self-worth, when your value depends on performance. It's fragile, because when life slows down or when your efforts don't translate into visible success, you feel hollow. You start asking, who am I when I'm not achieving? And that's the moment most smart kids quietly burn out, not from overwork, but from emotional disconnection, from trying to prove worth instead of living it. The truth is, you don't lack drive. You've just been driving in the wrong direction, chasing the feeling of being enough instead of simply being human. At its core, this story isn't about intelligence. It's about love and what you thought you had to do to earn it. For many, being the smart kid wasn't just about grades or praise. It was about belonging, about being seen, about hearing you're special and mistaking it for you're safe. So now, as an adult, your brain still links achievement with safety. Every time you fall behind, every time you're uncertain, that old fear resurfaces, the fear of becoming invisible. But here's the quiet truth that growing up teaches you. Life isn't a classroom anymore. There's no teacher waiting to validate your effort. No gold star to remind you that you matter. And yet, you still do. Because worth doesn't come from being extraordinary. It comes from being authentic, from showing up imperfect and in progress, and allow yourself to exist beyond the scoreboard. It's okay to outgrow the identity that once made you proud. It's okay to not be the best at everything. You're allowed to be average at something, and still valuable. In fact, some of the most grounded people are those who learn to rebuild themselves after the illusion of being special faded. They found peace not in performance, but in presence. They learned to trade being impressive for being real. And that shift from proving to becoming is where you'll rediscover your strength. You were never supposed to stay the smart kid. You were meant to evolve into someone wiser, someone who understands that intelligence is not measured in speed, but in depth, not in how fast you learn, but in how gently you treat yourself when learning gets hard. Maybe you were never behind. Maybe you were just busy unlearning the need to be perfect, because the world doesn't need more prodigies. It needs more people who know how to keep going when things stop being easy. It needs people who can sit in uncertainty, who can rebuild their sense of self without applause. It needs you, not the version that was always ahead, but the version that can finally breathe. So, take this moment as permission to let go. You don't have to catch up to anyone. You don't have to prove that you're still the smart one. You just have to return to being curious again about yourself, about life, about what comes next when you stop performing. If this spoke to something deep in you, stay with the space and subscribe. There's more to unlearn, more to heal, more to rediscover about who you really are beneath the labels. And as you do, remember, the real measure of intelligence isn't how far ahead you were. It's how deeply you can grow after realizing you no longer need to be.